This story was submitted by Sam. As a child, I always used to love going to my granddad's place in La Crosse, Surrey. I loved it there because he was fairly wealthy and had a large house and garden. When we were there, we would do things such as help him with gardening or play football. However, I was happiest when we could go explore the forest together. Although he didn't own the forest, he had a gate leading to it from his driveway, so it was easily accessible for my cousins and me. We would pretend to be just like adventurers looking for treasure in this huge area. We were trusted to go alone, as long as we didn't go too far out. One day we went into the forest like normal, hoping to find gold. My grandfather had just gotten me a metal detector to help me find something, and this was the first time I was actually going to be using it. My cousins and I made our way out, and this time we actually found something. We found a shoe. We wouldn't have thought much of it if it was old, but it looked like it was worn recently, which got us thinking that maybe we weren't alone in the forest. Now, this may not seem like much, just finding a shoe in a forest. However, our childish imaginations ran wild. We ran back to the house and showed the shoe to our family. They brushed it off as nothing, and my granddad even made a joke, saying that what we found isn't exactly treasure. The next time we were over there, which was probably about a fortnight later, unsurprisingly, we went back into the woods. I was starting to get a bit more mature, and I was the only boy out there out of the three of us, and I thought I was showing how brave I was by saying that I would lead the way. Trying to prove myself led me so far ahead that I could no longer see them. I was young, and I realized I had made a mistake. Feeling slightly panicked, I called out to them, but I got no reply. I began to run back the way I came, when suddenly I heard my younger cousin scream. At this point I was almost certain they were trying to wind me up and scare me. I yelled back to him that it's not funny, and ran to where the scream came from. When I got to them, however, I realized that this wasn't a joke. Both of them stood wide-eyed and still as statues. They were looking at a dead deer. I'm not the type to easily be grossed out, but the thing was covered in blood and was disgusting. I remember being filled with adrenaline, and I said we should tell our parents and my granddad. We then all sprinted back to the house. I remember all three of us running down my granddad's driveway screaming deer over and over. Once we got to them and explained what happened, my granddad and uncle went to investigate. When they came back, they told us, unconvincingly, that the deer died from running into some thorn forest. A couple of months later, I was back at my granddad's house, alone this time. My cousins were on holiday or something like that. I was just playing about in the backyard with a ball when I thought about the forest. I knew I wasn't allowed in there. However, my uncle and granddad were in the house working. I was never the type of kid to obey rules, which is why I snuck off into the forest. I remember as soon as I opened the gate, I was drawing in adrenaline. The fact that I wasn't allowed there made it even better. I ran to the biggest stick I could find and picked it up. I knew I would be safe if I had a weapon like this on me. I was there for about 10 minutes exploring when I saw an old penny. I picked it up and genuinely believed that I had actually found something. I was so happy, even though I knew I had to keep it to myself because my family couldn't find out I was in the forest. I was about to run back when I saw another one. I couldn't believe it. Then I found another one. And another. I was so happy at the time that I didn't notice the pennies were leading me deeper into the forest. Blindly I went on, picking them up, getting deeper and deeper, when I suddenly heard my uncle shouting my name. I jumped out of my skin with fear. I turned around and he was running at me. I had been caught, and I was going to get in so much trouble, I remember thinking. My uncle asked me what was in my hand, and I showed him the coins. He then saw the trail that was leading me on. He told me to turn back to the house and go and get my granddad. What they found in the forest is unnerving. The coins led to a little den where someone had been staying, but there was no sign of them though, just old clothes and a bottle of alcohol. Immediately after finding this, they called the police. They concluded that a man had been living there for a while and had only recently left, probably when my uncle called my name. What gets me though, is the fact that when my cousins and I were playing in the forest, he was living there the whole time, and probably watching us. Nothing like this has ever happened again, and I now have a 4-year-old sister, and she often asks me to take her into the forest. You can probably guess my answer. This story was submitted by an anonymous viewer. I'm an 18-year-old girl about to start college here in California, and this is also where I live. I've been going to the beach ever since I can remember to surf, hang out with friends, and have the occasional bonfire. This day a couple of friends and I decided to surf in the evening when the swell would be bigger. This was also during winter because the beach didn't allow surfing during the summer due to accidents with swimmers. I drove up the beach with a friend in my car, and my 2 other friends drove in another car. We're all female. We arrived at about 6:30, just watching the sunset. We got in the water for a couple of hours, and before we knew it, it was dark, around 9 p.m. It's hard to keep track of time in the water. We all assumed it was earlier. 2 of my friends had to leave, so we all got back to the sand and said our goodbyes. Now it was just my friend and me. When we got to our backpacks, where we kept our phones, a snack, some water, and a towel, we noticed that all of our stuff was scattered. Also, it looked as if my backpack was slashed in the front. The snacks were open and dumped on the sand, water was open and halfway empty, and my towel was missing. We just dismissed it as maybe our friends being weird or mean, or maybe an animal did it. We decided to just sit in the sand and talk for a little before the beach closed at 10:30. We were the only ones there. As we were talking, we heard whistling. At first we thought it was the wind, but then we realized that the wind doesn't make tunes as the whistler was doing. So we decided to pack up and make our way up to my car. This beach has a staircase up, which is extremely steep, and consists of about 300 steps. It is very tiring getting up, needing the occasional break, and especially hard getting up with a surfboard. We took our time on the way up to make sure that we wouldn't fall back. As we were about a quarter of the way up the stairs, we heard the whistling down below us, but close. We picked up our pace up the stairs, which was very tiring. My friend stopped, looked back, and called up, "Alicia, who's that?" "Whoa, dude, go! Get up those stairs now!" She sounded panicked, so I immediately looked back at her, and her face lost all color. She started hauling ass up the stairs, but I couldn't see what she saw. She just kept yelling to get up and go, so I did. We made it up, very exhausted. We stopped at the top because it was the Pacific Coast Highway, and we knew people would be around and cars would be passing, so we would be okay. We waited about 5 minutes, just watching the stairs to see who would come up. No one did. I asked my friend what she saw, and what she said scared the shit out of me. She said that at first she saw the outline of a guy, but as soon as he stepped into the moonlight, she said that he had a huge grin on his face. When she looked at his hand, she noticed a machete. Not a pocket knife or a kitchen knife, but distinctly a machete. Her voice was shaking when she said this, so I said that we should go back to my car. We had to cross the street to get across the highway, and then up a desolate hill to get where we parked. On the way up the hill, we heard metal dragging across the ground. We stopped a few times to look around, but every time we did, the noise would pause. As soon as the car was in sight, the noise stopped entirely. We strapped our surfboards to the top of the car and started making sure that they were secured, when a fucking hand grabs my foot. I immediately kick it off, and as I'm screaming, my friend comes to the side of the car and sees what's going on. When the hand let go, we ran down the hill and my friend called the cops. They got there around 10 minutes later, and we explained what we saw down on the beach and what happened in my car. They looked under my car, finding only a machete. Patrol cars were going around the hill and road searching for the man she saw. She described him as being old, very old, with gray hair to about his shoulders, wearing baggy clothes, and having a creepy, scarred face that absolutely scared the shit out of her. After the way she explained the man, I'm glad I didn't have to see his face. After about 20 minutes, the police told us to get back in the car and head home, telling us that they would inform us if they found the guy. They collected the machete to see if they could get any fingerprints off it. We headed home and just talked about how the old guy got up the stairs so fast without us seeing him, and how he got to my car without us seeing him, and wondered how did he know it was my car, and why he had a machete. The police still haven't called us about anything. It's been 7 months since this happened. This story was submitted by Amy. This took place about 2 years ago, around June or July. I was 15 years old at the time, and my friend was just about to finish her first year at secondary school. It was either Tuesday or a Wednesday, and we had just finished school for the day. My nan had just died a few months before this, so it wasn't unusual for me to get off the bus at the stop before mine, as that's where my granddad lives, and the churchyard nearby is where she is buried. Before long, the bus came to a stop and we descended down the steps. There were at least 30 kids who normally got off at this point, as not many kids live in the other villages that the bus goes through on its route. But on this day, there weren't as many. For some reason on this day, the bus came to a stop at least a few minutes away from its normal place, probably due to the fact that we had a different driver than usual. I planned on getting off at this stop before going to the village shop and then heading down to the alleyway leading to the church. My friend, being 11 at the time, always came with me, particularly because she had known my nan quite well these past few years. As I stepped off the bus, I noticed that something wasn't quite right. Normally around this time of day, the roads are quite busy, due to the fact that the village school tends to have netball sessions on these days. The shop was on the other side of the road, so both my friend and I stood by and let the rest of the kids go past. We waited for the bus to move out of the way before crossing. However, as the bus moved, I noticed a large white van parked in a nearby lay-by. This village is quite segregated from town, particularly because not many people go by this way, so it was unusual for any form of heavy goods vehicle or delivery vehicles to come by this way. As we were waiting for a few cars to drive past us, I noticed that there were 2 men in the van, just sitting there. The engine was off, and they just sat there, staring at the kids that walked past their vehicle. I continued watching, missing the fact that the road was now clear for us to cross. As I'm a lot older than most of these kids, the fact that they were eagerly glaring at the children in sort of a devilish way made me sick, like sick to my stomach, and it got worse as we crossed the road. A few minutes later, we emerged from a shop, and I was putting my drink in my bag. Out of curiosity, I decided to look up, hoping that the van had vanished, but it was still there. To some extent, I was relieved, for they hadn't moved towards any of the children, but something was still off. I looked towards the window, and the men were staring at me and my friend, somewhat cracking malevolent smiles at us as they started their van. For anyone who has a younger sister or brother, or even a friend, this immediately was a red flag. I wasn't able to think clearly, for I didn't have a clue as regards to what was going on. But I didn't think twice before crossing the road, my friend in tow. When we had crossed, the van had stopped moving. It had stopped just outside of the shop. My friend realized we were going the wrong way, for we weren't walking anywhere near the churchyard, and she started querying my actions. "Why aren't we going to the church?" she asked wearily. "Have you changed your mind? Are we going tomorrow?" At this point, I looked around to see that the van had turned around in the grove next to the shop. I immediately knew that this wasn't right. Without thinking, I tried to whisper to my friend, who was now quite startled. I had sped up a few paces, and I was now behaving frantically. "Walk a bit faster," I replied to her. "Don't stop. Just keep pace with me, okay?" She didn't understand, but she went along with it. The van was following us down the road, slowly inching closer to us. It stayed at least 15 meters away from us, as if not to draw suspicion, yet it was pretty clear that the driver was after us. I didn't tell her what was on my mind, because I didn't want to scare her, but I think she saw it in my eyes. I kept on looking back at the van, which by this point was drawing even closer. She turned around without hesitation and fixated her eyes on the driver. Her face turned pale as she looked back at me, and I can distinctly remember her raspy little voice as she asked me, "Are we gonna die?" No one was around to hear her crying, and I couldn't make her stop. I had thought of splitting up, one of us going straight home whilst the other knocked on a nearby door, but then I realized something. I had no clue as to who they were after, or what they were after. If I had left her on her own down a street, what's to say that they would not have followed her instead? At this point, the van sped up, and it appeared to be over. She cried a sigh of relief as I told her, "We're safe now." But it wasn't over. The van had stopped at the end of the road, and had parked on the pavement. The whole vehicle was covering the sidewalk. We were blocked off. I thought to myself that the best thing to do would be to go back, but I just froze. I stared at them as they got out of their van and started walking towards us. My friend kept insisting that I knew what to do, and I could make them go away, but I was just as frightened as she was. Stuff like this only seems to happen in the movies, but this wasn't a film. This was real life. The two men, one in his mid-30s and the other a bit younger age, started to approach us. Not a word was spoken, but as they got closer and closer, their facial expressions changed to something sinister. The first guy, who was tall and bald, gestured towards the van to his friend as they kept eye contact with us, and the younger one looked down at my friend. By now, I had that inkling to push her slightly backwards behind me, so in the chance that they grabbed me, she could get away. But the second man, who had bright ginger hair and a beard, turned slightly to the right of us, going towards my little friend. Before I could even think, I shouted, "No!" just before the bald guy thrust out his hand to grab my arm, but he didn't even manage to touch me. Before they had a chance to even lay a finger on us, a friendly face approached from around the corner. My friend's neighbor, a little old lady. Her little Jack Russell started to bark at the men, making them aware of her presence. Before long, the two men bundled back into their van without a word, driving away up a hill at the end of the street. I now have a fear of vans. When we both returned home, we told our parents. My parents, who have never experienced anything like this, found it hard to understand. But my friend's parents, however, just thanked the stars that their neighbor had come around the corner at that moment. In all honesty, I wanted to hug that lady so much, but I couldn't, and we didn't even tell her why we were so thankful. But it really got me thinking. If she hadn't come around the corner at just that moment, I don't think we would be alive to tell this story. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured on an upcoming video, make sure you check the description for information on how to submit your stories. Now for the first story. There usually is a reason that your parents tell you not to go into the woods alone. Fortunately, you had some family members that were keeping a close eye on you. Had your uncle not found you in time, you never know who you would have come up against. Now for the second story. This story reminded me of a plot of a horror movie or something. Thankfully, you and your friend got away. You can meet a lot of crazy people on the PCH. I think your first giveaway should have been that your bags were slashed open, because not very many creatures on the beach would do that. I mean, seagulls will peck at it, but they're not going to rip it open. Either way, I'm glad you both made it out of the situation okay, and hopefully you never have to go through anything like that again. Now for the last story. It's really a good thing that your neighbor came around at that exact moment. Otherwise your friend probably would have been abducted, and you very well could have been too. Sometimes you just need to breathe, and do whatever you need to do without even thinking. If that means run, just get yourself out of the situation. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.